Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and today I'm joined by two guests. We have Leo Rydel from the Geekly Goods YouTube channel and Mike Thomas from the Chatter After / the Amateur Otaku podcast / Collider. And today we're going to be beginning our journey across the 4 nations as we revisit, review, and break down the beloved Nickelodeon series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water. And before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at FilmOptix, or email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Gentlemen, how has your week been? I'm seeing Mike's over there. He's got the Mike of the Water Tribe logo just, plastered on his name. Of course, we've all talked about which bender we've all wanted to be, but Mike, how's your weekend been treating you?
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me back on, man. It's a blast and a pleasure to be able to talk about one of my favorite series. As far as my week, watching Avatar is a highlight. So it has been a blast revisiting Book 1. I think it's very underrated. So can't wait to talk about it.
I agree. Mm-hmm. And Leo making his comeback onto the podcast. How you been, man?
Hey, I've been good. Thanks for having me back on, brother. Great week so far. Yes, I would love to be a waterbender. Look. To be able to control the waves. No, it's not because I want to do blood bending. It's because I want to control the waves of the water. Like, it's cool, man. Like, look, you'll never have to go a hot summer day without having a swimming pool ever again. If you can water bend, bro, you can just make a pool in the backyard, bro. Like, you're good. But it's been a good week, man. I actually completed this book about a week and a half ago. Like, I blew through this thing so quickly, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to talk. So I can't wait to talk about it. I was saying this before we got on. Lots of implications and foreshadowing for book 3. So really excited to dive into this and talk more about it. I feel like book 1 is kind of underrated just because you think about book 2 and how extensive that was and how great it is. I mean, book 3, I think, is peak Avatar, in my opinion. And then you got those, the second half of Legend of Korra just kind of buries this first season, and it feels like it's gone underrated.
I do agree that I really feel like this first season is underrated, and we'll definitely get into it here in a bit. But yeah, it's crazy because, I mean, just rewatching it, it's like, what is it, 20 episodes, I think, for book 1? It's either 18 or 20 episodes. And of course, they're only, 22 to 24 minutes each. And you can easily blow through like 5. And it's, mine is that one, The Great Divide episode, which I still enjoy, but you definitely don't necessarily need to watch it if you're going to be doing a rewatch. But I just did it for, the kicks and all that. But definitely, I'm glad you guys have had a fantastic week. For all the listeners out there, before we get into our review, just want to let you guys know how everything is going to kind of go down here. So, we'll be going through our initial rewatch thoughts. This is completely spoiler free as well. And of course, we're going to stick to book 1. We're going to try not to go off the topic book 2 or book 3 because we will have other episodes covering those respectively. So like I said before, we'll get into our initial rewatch thoughts and then kind of get into our favorite characters and episodes from book 1, and then our favorite bending and non-bending moments from book 1 as well. I kind of stole that page from the Braving of the Elements, the official Avatar podcast, of course, that's up with, is it Janet Varney and Dante Bosco, who both hosts that.
Korra and Zuko, baby.
Yeah, Korra and Zuko. So, I took that page from them because I think it's a really fun question. And then, of course, we will get into a bit of the, book one Avatar ranking. And then we'll get into our final thoughts and kind of just close on out here. No ratings this time around because we've seen this a million times. And clearly, we're doing a 3-part series on this. And, all the Avatar news that has been coming out between just even the Netflix show, I'm interested to see. And then, of course, we're getting 3 new animated series, supposedly or reportedly, from Avatar Studios. That's underneath Paramount Pictures. So very, very excited for that. So, gentlemen, before we begin the actual review, I wanted to ask you guys, how were you introduced to the series overall? I know some people kind of get into the series a little bit later, especially for me, Spectacular Spider-Man. I know it's always been there, but it's been on my backlog forever. But I wanted to ask you guys. Yeah. Oh,
absolute banger.
I am on like episode 16. I think I'm at the start of season 2 when the new year starts after. I was like, this is season 2. This is season 2.
It's 13 episodes. I don't know why they merged them like that, but yeah, it's 13 episode seasons.
Yeah, not Nickelodeon. Sorry, Netflix does that with a few of their shows. I don't know why, but really quick, before we start the official review, I wanted to ask you guys, we'll start with Leo, then go to Mike. How were you introduced to Avatar: The Last Airbender, Leo?
When did this series come out? Like 03, 04?
I think it was 05.
05.
That was a good year.
That's 17 years ago now. Yeah, I was about 12 years old, regular watcher of Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, Cartoon Network. Like I was, honestly, when I was younger, I wanted to be a cartoonist. So I watched a lot of animated shows, tried to draw a lot of animated characters. And this show just kind of came out of nowhere. This show called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I remember being there when it first debuted on Nick and them advertising the new episodes with the little logo in the corner and really setting the stage for new episodes and further seasons. And I just remember watching that first episode and having such a blast as a kid. Like, honestly, I was Aang's age watching this. And I just recall how fun it was to see that first episode and how charming and whimsical it was and how much fun it was to watch as a kid. It's such a different experience as an adult because you go back and you watch this first episode and I'm like, wow, Aang is really putting the moves on Katara. Like, I don't remember that, but like, it's like you're seeing it through a different lens at this point. But I just remember having a load of fun as a kid and just really tuning into it when it actually came out on Nickelodeon. And honestly, it was a nail biter having to wait every week for the new episodes because I don't know if y'all recall this, but Toonami did it a lot. Like when they have to catch up, they will start over. So they'll start all the way over. And they went back over book 1 at least one time before getting on to book 2. And it was like it's grueling, bro. Like when you gotta wait and you get to the next episode, you like, I think it's a new one. And actually it's the very first episode all over again. You're just like, I was really hoping for another new episode, but really, like, I was just really there at the beginning and have been an Avatar fan ever since. I mean, I've watched the series several more times. I won't say I've watched it all the way through episode by episode a lot, but I definitely skip around. I watch it all the time. Like my friends loved it. Sorry, I'm going on a total tangent here. I was very excited for The Last Airbender. Very excited when it was first coming out. M. Night Shyamalan's movie.
Ooh, and that's rough,
what a disappointment. I spent $60, which is a lot for 18-year-old kid money. And $60 on merch. Went there, had a shirt on, a necklace, a hat, had a keychain. Man, I went and returned that stuff right after the movie, y'all. Return. But Avatar: Last Airbender, a great series. I've been there since the start.
Okay, yeah, that was man, it's pretty much the same for me, but I'll give my little spiel after. But Mike, how were you introduced to the series?
Very much like Leo, right? Like it's interesting to think about. Kids don't experience TV or media the same way we did. Like it was very much you turn on Nickelodeon and you just watch whatever was on. And so all of a sudden, boom, first episode of Avatar comes on after SpongeBob or Danny Phantom, whatever I was watching at the time. And it's just like, okay, I'm intrigued. And you just keep coming back week after week, watching every episode. And me being a huge fantasy guy probably started with Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's interesting because I was like 8 years old when the show first aired. And like Leo said, this gigantic gap in between seasons. And so I never watched book 3 because at that point in time, I think I turned like 11 or 12. So I stopped watching Nickelodeon. I was playing a lot of video games and the show just never came back and I missed it. So I didn't get back to it till I was like 16 years old, like 5-6 years later. And so that's when Netflix had DVDs and they mailed, like, that was really frustrating having to watch them in like 4-episode chunks, mail the next DVD out, wait for the next one to come back in. But it was worth it because this series is phenomenal. And like Leo said, watching it as a kid, it's fun. Watching it as a teenager or an adult, you pick up on the nuances, you pick up on the character development and the changes throughout the story and how these characters are growing as the story progresses. And so it's just really captivating and powerful. And each time I rewatch it, I find something new in it. Even this last time, found some details that I never noticed before. And that's just how special this series is. It's honestly one of the best pieces of media ever created.
I would agree with you, full, like 100% there, Mike. For me, for introduction, much like Leo, I watched a lot of Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney Channel, all that stuff. But Nickelodeon was probably my favorite network. And I just remember, them announcing this, like, this new show, Avatar: Last Airbender, is coming out. I was like, what is this? Like, I just didn't really know. But I think I agree with you, Mike, when it came to fantasy, because for listeners who don't know, fantasy is like me and Mike's like bread and butter, 100%. It is so good. But I think my love for fantasy pretty much started around there at the same time when Harry Potter was coming out as well. So it was a really great combination of the two. But me and my sister would just watch it together, and it was just one of those shows that you could just get lost in. And like you said, watching it as a kid or teenager or an adult, Michael, you pick up on different things, and I don't know, even watching like Teen Titans like now, and it's like, oh man, there's so much stuff I missed when I was a kid. Because, when you're watching when you're a kid, you're kind of just turning off your brain, like you're watching the show, but you're not like paying attention as much as you could be. And, during this rewatch, I pretty much, like I said, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I did rewatch it maybe a few years ago. I had the Blu-rays. I scooped those up as fast as I could. If you were able to buy the Blu-ray copy during Prime Day, it was only like $16. Like, heck, man, I almost bought it again because it was such a great deal.
I've bought this series way too many times, I will admit. I think I've paid for Avatar like 3 times.
Yeah, I want to buy the digital. It's just so, I mean, my love for this, and this truly is my favorite TV show ever because of the journey. And like, it's able to tell this clear, concise story within 3 seasons. And then, it's just so, it's honest, it's raw, it's magical, it's awe-inspiring, and just, and so many studios have been trying to recreate that magic that, we need something like Avatar: The Last Airbender for years. It really was like a huge staple, but I don't think Nickelodeon at the time really knew what they had, because, the internet wasn't really a thing back then. So, for all the kids out there who probably don't know what cable is, it was, weekly, you had to wait week to week. And it's just been, I don't think anything will ever top it. To be completely honest, I love this series so dearly. But enough chatter about the introduction here, because I'll go on a tangent myself. Gentlemen, are you ready to head back and journey through book 1 for Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Heck yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after this introduction to Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water.
Water. Earth. Fire. Air. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years passed and my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang. And although his airbending skills are great, he has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone. But I believe Aang can save the world.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back with our Avatar: The Last Airbender Book 1 Water series revisited with creators Mike and Bryan, and starring so many crazy talented voice actors. We have D. Bradley Baker, Zach Tyler Eisen, Mae Whitman, and Dante Bosco himself. And if you don't know the story by now, I'm just going to read it to you anyway. This is just the IMDb synopsis, I guess you could say. Or, I can just play the intro because that explains everything.
We have the intro memorized by heart anyway.
Yes, we do. But for those who are new to the series, it is a war-torn world of elemental magic. A young boy reawakens to undertake a dangerous mystic quest to fulfill his destiny as the Avatar and bring balance to the world. It says peace, but I'm going to put balance because that's more accurate, because balance, peace is a little, things happen. Crazy things still happen when the Avatar is around, I have to admit. But as we've mentioned before, we will be getting into our breakdown here and then getting into our favorite episodes and a character from Book 1 or characters. And then our favorite bending and non-bending moments from Book 1. And then how does Book 1 kind of fall into our Avatar ranking. Then our final thoughts. And then we will disperse from there. Of course, like I said before, this is complete spoiler free, not spoiler free. This is spoiler heavy because, like I said before, if you haven't watched it, we're just, all gloves are off. So
I was gonna say spoiler free, man. I don't know if I
yes,
can
sir.
hold my tongue.
For the folks listening at home, we're about 15 minutes or so into this recording. If you guys somehow made it this far spoiler free, just go watch the thing. It's on Netflix right now anyway. You're good.
Yeah, and it's on Paramount Plus as well. I think it will be leaving Netflix. Actually, I don't know if it will be for the time being, since they're doing the live action remake. I don't know if it's going to be still on there or not. But
it's probably some contractual thing where it gets to stay on there a little bit.
Yeah.
It'll probably be on there for a bit, like Cowboy Bebop with the live action. It'll probably be on there for a bit.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Let's hope for better than that, please.
You had to make us depressed. Let's talk about Avatar now.
Yeah, let's talk about the thing that brings us joy to our lives. So we are now in our initial rewatch segment of the show. So we're going to have Mike start off, then Leo, then I'll go last. So Mike, just give us your initial rewatch thoughts of Book 1 and, some of the things you picked up and just your general overall experience.
So this is probably like my fourth or fifth time watching this book all the way through, if I'm going to be honest. So I'll just give you my overall impressions on this story as a whole. What I love about Book 1, Water, is that it's basically setting up the world, right? Leo mentioned that earlier, that so many payoffs happen in books 2 and 3 from this season. And that's very intentional. Like, a lot of people look at it and think that it's, this is a lot of filler. It's a lot of villains of the week. Like, we have the pirates and we have the Great Divide, but all of that is still world building, and it's fleshing out what this universe is, what the Avatar's role in it is supposed to be. And so I think it's just really well executed. You have them literally traveling all the way to the other side of the world. And each stop, we're seeing new groups of people, new ways of living in this universe. One of the standouts, right, is like the storm, where we see flashbacks for Zuko and Aang. So we get to see not only their origin stories, but also the crewmen on Zuko's ship, or the old lady and the fisherman that Aang and his crew are dealing with in that episode. And it's just kind of helping flesh out everything. So I think that's really what this entire book was for, while also sprinkling in elements, not intentional, sprinkling in elements of really great character moments, right? Like Aang, Katara, and Sokka meet in that pilot episode, and you just see their relationship grow and grow to where they become like a real family unit by the time you get to the end of the season. And so I just think it's the perfect introduction to the Avatar world. Yeah, it's not probably nearly as heavy as something like book 2, but you only get to book 2 because of book 1. So that's why I think it's instrumental to the success of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
That is so well said, Mike. I think we could just end the podcast right now.
Right, cut the mics, y'all. We good. We good. Mike got us.
Water Tribe.
Water Tribe. Water Tribe.
What a child.
Oh, man. This, so many great memes from just, oh my God, I love it. But Leo, what was your, I'll pass it over to you here. What was your initial rewatch thoughts for book 1?
So I have actually done a better job at skipping book 1. They're going back and rewatching it all.
Dang it, Leo.
Look, man, it's not that I hate book 1. It's like we were discussing earlier, though. I just dive deeper into like the deeper lore. So books 2 and 3 here, books 3 and 4 of Legend of Korra. But I kind of went back and forgot how much it sets up for later. So we are introduced to Boomy, Avatar Roku. A lot of Roku, by the way. The fact that Roku like appears in like the 3rd episode, I was just like, oh my gosh, like there are so many implications for what's further down the line in this series. We're introduced to Jet. We're introduced to, well, we see Zuko use the blue spirit, and we see Aang uncover him, and we get this little foreshadowing moment of, hey, maybe we can be friends later down the line. So there's all these moments that foreshadow the 3rd book, which is kind of odd because you think it would be a lot of things that foreshadow the 2nd, and there's some, but like it really, like we see Zhang, and I love that we stop at fire first here. And it's like, okay, Aang's learning water, but I like that we stop at fire first and realize like that's got to be his final destination. And we set it up for when he has grown enough as a character to be able to handle that is when he will be able to take on the firebending more. So lots of really great setup, lots of great foreshadowing. I love that in this book, it seems like he relies on Roku for all the answers. And then as the series goes on, he's able to learn things on his own to where it was just kind of tapping Roku every now and then. But I really like this beginning of the story for Aang, Katara, and Sokka. Yo, Sokka, really sexist at first. Holy crap. The Kyoshi Warriors really put him on the right path because our man was out here flexing muscles, talking about women can't be warriors and stuff. I forgot Sokka was that sexist, y'all. I'm like, wow, the tribe's customs were really coming out. So I really like that they really bumped that character down to reality. And I think the Siege of the North, the 2-part finale, that's some of the best Avatar period right there. Commander Zhao, what a villain. Somebody who's so proud and just so above it all that he was willing to kill a spirit. Really good episode. And visually stunning. I mean, for this to come out in 2005 and me to be like in awe of how beautifully animated the 2-part ending was, man, that's saying something. But lots of setup here, great animation, really good character introductions, which we always come back to, and just a great start to the journey.
Yeah, again, you guys, you hit it right there on the nail on the head there, Leo. Like when it comes to book 1, it's the beginning of everything. Like it may not be like, compared to everything else, it may not be, the most like exciting like season of this 3-season journey, but it's so necessary to set up this world. Nobody knows what an avatar is, at least in this universe. They have to explain everything.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry to cut in, but I love that the first episode is The Boy in the Iceberg and the last one is Avatar Aang. Like, those two titles right there show his character development.
Yeah.
Not just that. I love in the first episode, we pan in past the rock and Aang's not there. Yeah. And then once they knock him out the ice, Aang is now in the intro from there on out. So great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. See, I never even noticed that before. And I was like, my gosh, like it's, like there's so many things on so many different rewatches. But as far as my initial rewatch thoughts go, it's, I don't know. Like every time I just start this journey, like anytime I like rewatch a show, I have to start from episode 1, like season 1, episode 1. I can't skip. That's just me because I love seeing just the entire journey like over and over again. Now that it's more accessible, this series is more accessible for people to watch, whether it be through streaming or through physical media. I actually just popped in my physical media just because, heck, like I bought them, I'm going to use them. I tried doing through Paramount Plus, but there was way too many commercials in between, and I didn't want to give Netflix a satisfaction because I've been on Netflix way too much already with Spectacular Spider-Man. But I mean, in hindsight, I guess I could have just watched it on Netflix. But it's like, I love just popping in a disc and watching it that way, just boom, 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 boom. I can go through all these episodes. But for my initial rewatch thoughts, everything that happens, like you guys have pretty much kind of, I can kind of echo what you guys are saying, especially with Sokka. The fact that, there's the Northern Water Tribe, which looks like a water Pokemon gym, by the way. Like, I was just watching it I was like, man, it really just does look like a water type Pokemon gym. Like I was expecting like Misty or some other Pokemon water gym trainer just to pop out of nowhere. Like, oh, welcome to my gym. And it's like, I can just visually see that, or it being a mere reflection of that. But especially the fact that, there's these customs in the Northern Water Tribe where, men are effectively the breadwinners, and women are the ones who do have the ability to bend water, use their skills for healing. So it's kind of like, the whole misogynistic thing of women belong in the kitchen and all that garbage. But the fact that it reaches all the way down even to the Southern Water Tribe, the same customs, which by the way isn't really a tribe, it's more of just like a colony.
It's a couple of people, man. I paused and counted how many people was standing there, and it was like 18 people. I was like, come on. The Northern Water Tribe ought to be ashamed of themselves, shunning 25 people out of their tribe like that. That is shameful. But in the comics, they do start like building their own, and we know by Legend of Korra, the Southern Water Tribe is like very established. But like, still, come on, man. Come on. Grandmaster Paku, you couldn't send Grand, no nothing, man. No resources, bro.
No, sir. She broke up that engagement. She said, peace.
She was not having it. Grand said, nope, I'm good. By the way, Katara challenging Grandmaster Paku. Oh my God, that was so dope.
That's what I love about this season, right? And it's something that a lot of animated shows kind of shy away from. Like, Sokka is very sexist at the beginning of this season, and it makes him basically an unlikable jerk. When he meets the Kyoshi warriors and he has that turn, he kind of changes. Like the first 4 episodes, he has this mini character arc. That doesn't happen. But I also love how you then see why Sokka's that way by seeing everybody in the Northern Tribe and seeing how Paku treats Katara. It's like, yeah, this is the culture Sokka grew up in. That's why he is the way he is. And then it's up to Katara to change everybody in the finale. And it just, again, coming full circle, it's just great character progression and allowing our main cast to be imperfect. Like, Sokka was never portrayed to be a villain, but it was showing, hey, he's got flaws he needs to work through. We're going to show him on that journey, however small or minuscule it might be. They were able to focus on Sokka, the one non-bender of the group, probably the least important character, in this first like 7 episodes, he had a little arc, and then you get to see it progress as the story goes on.
And meanwhile, like to go off of that, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the most evil character in the franchise, Fire Lord Ozai, who loves his daughter more than he loves his son. And it's crazy to think like, okay, the Fire Nation customs are maybe not quite as misogynist as the Water Tribe. Like, it's crazy to think that like the bad guys are a little more progressive in their combat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of that particular character who we don't get formally introduced to until next season, I love how Azula is seen in like episode 12 of this show, and she's in every single intro. And it's like they thought ahead. Most shows don't think into the next season. It's like Azula's there smiling, and it's terrifying once you know it's her.
It's Azula. It's yeah. And I noticed I'm a rewatch. I'm like, oh yeah, like there's this other girl there. I'm like, oh, the first time ever watching it, it's like, you know, it's probably just Zuko's like sister or something. I didn't really know who, but by the very end, you know, like the last scene, Fire Lord Ozai, who is voiced by Mark Hamill, which blew my mind, by the way, when like I didn't know that until, oh my gosh, maybe like a few years earlier. I was like, and I just never really bothered to see. I was like, man, like that's a really menacing voice. I'm like, Mark Hamill, like, excuse me, that's crazy. But, you know, we see at the very end, the final scene where he's saying, you know, Zuko has failed me. He's like, you know, I need you to essentially clean up his mess. And my gosh, it's Azula with that sinister smile.
And her little bell, that little bell that always dings.
Those chimes haunt my dreams, man.
I know.
I can't stand them little bells. I'd be like, oh boy, Azula's here.
Yeah, it's. I mean, book 1 just does such a great job. Just not even, setting up for season 2, season 3, but you know, being introduced to like Zhang or the pirates, especially the pirates who show up in multiple episodes later on. Because when you're first watching, you're like, oh, this might just be some crazy kooky wild adventure with like some pirates, and it's like, no, like they actually, you know, like team up with General Zhao, and you know they're effectively trying to kill Zuko because you get so much backstory like, oh, that's why Zuko's a jerk. You know, his father banished him for effectively speaking out of term during a war general meeting, and seeing how ruthless the Fire Nation can be, but also showing that there are people within the Fire Nation who are not like that. It's kind of like looking at Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where they show, you know, the separatist side with, I believe Padme had a best friend in one of the episodes, and that, you know, there's obviously there's two sides to every story, but you have so many people within the Fire Nation who think that, you know, their generals, like their war heroes, are keeping them safe and, you know, trying to spread the love or the attention, the world renowned of the Fire Nation across the land, because hey, they want to take over the world because this Sozin's comet is coming. And it's like, oh, what better time to take over the 4 nations than when Sozin's comet is arriving. So it really just sets up like, oh, that's why the Fire Nation's attacking, because, you know, they want to be the dominant nation. And of course, even speaking on like genocide with the air nomads in this episode, within the first few episodes, and it's very heavy for a kid's show, but it does such a phenomenal job of explaining what genocide is to children. Much like how Teen Titans kind of tackled the like race issue between I think it was
Starfire and Cyborg.
Cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
So like these, these animated shows, or at least these, you know, old school animated shows, that it's just, we rarely get anything like this. I actually don't think we get anything like this anymore. Maybe Arcane comes close to it, but the fact that they're able to touch on genocide within Avatar book 1 it's phenomenal, that they're able to, you know, kind of just convey that to kids in a very sophisticated way. And you may not realize it at first, but as you get older, it's like, oh yeah, that's genocide. So it's...
Yeah, they do a really good job of dancing over it by just saying like, oh, they wiped out the air nomads. Like, they do a good job of not telling kids like, hey, they stormed into the air temples and killed and really messed them up. Like, they do a really good job of just like translating this language to be kid friendly. But it does also, like you said, it does also teach kids like what genocide is, what it looked like, what war is. I mean, let's be 100% real. Like, I was watching that first episode and I realized, I'm like, wow, Aang doesn't know that all the people he's interacting with, their whole lives, probably including Gran, a war has been going on.
It's crazy, you know, looking at it from Aang's perspective, you know, he puts himself in this avatar state because he doesn't want to be the avatar. And I mean, rightfully so. You know, we kind of see the flashbacks during this, I think it was during the Storm episode, where, you know, all of his friends were kind of treating him a little bit differently. But then again, the air nomads did kind of tell him before the age of 16. But I guess, you know, again, war kind of just changes things. And Aang not wanting to become the avatar, and like, you really had to put in perspective, 100 years is a really long time. And it's like, it also probably comes as a culture shock to Aang as well, when it comes to not obviously seeing what happens to his people, but just how the world is overall. And, you know, a lot of people saying, oh, you know, the avatar turned his back on the world. And it's kind of like this delayed, meant to be like destiny that, you know, he was supposed to fulfill 100 years later, because we don't know what the world would have been like if Aang didn't run away from home.
There are some really good what if videos out there of like, what if Aang did not run? And it was like, yeah, you got to think about it. Like, he probably would have had to face Fire Lord Azulon. Who knows what could have happened with that? Like, I mean, it's like you said, it's all for a reason. And who knows, he might have like died, but trying to stop the war, and it would have been on to the next avatar, which I guess will be not Korra if he died that far ago. So
it would have been Katara.
Yeah, right. Avatar Katara. That was such a weird ending on that video. I was like,
Avatar Sokka.
Oh God, no! Don't let Sokka. That'll go to his head. I think that's the theme of the show, right? Like, the entire point of the series is destiny, and can you control it? Can you overcome your own demons and change your destiny? And that's something that's set up a lot in the next season. But as far as this one, it really just speaks to Aang as a character, right? And I think that's why Aang is so interesting, is because he's acting aloof. He's acting like, oh, I'm just a kid. I just want to have fun. But he's really trying to cope, and he's still running away from his problems until we get to that Storm episode. Like, he pulls out his map and he says, we're going to go to Kyoshi Island. We're going to do blah, blah, blah. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, my guy, we got to get to the North Pole. And it's like, he's still kind of subconsciously delaying being the Avatar. And like, you guys were talking about how they kind of shied away or like changed the language a little bit on what genocide is. And they skirted around like the word genocide and death, but we see Monk Gyatso's skeleton surrounded by Fire Nation armor. And that is one of the craziest images you will ever see in a kid's cartoon. And I still can't fathom that this aired right after SpongeBob SquarePants. Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is true.
Next show, you see a skeleton laid out around some Fire Nation armor. Like, oh, man.
Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?
By the way, speaking of Clone Wars, Dave Filoni directed, I think, 8 of these episodes in this season.
He did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was very surprised, and I saw his name come up because I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, again, I never really bothered to like kind of read the credits, especially, you know, when you're a kid. It's like, oh, you know, episode's over, you know, like whatever. But, you know, obviously us being older now, we are able to appreciate just the writers as well. It's just, you know, like you said, Mike, Aang is trying to delay his duties as being the Avatar. He's like, oh, you know, we're going from the south to the North Pole. Like, they are literally traveling across the world. So of course it is going to take an entire season. And I love how it really shows like how big this world actually is, everything that happens in between with every single episode. You know, how big this world is, and, you know, all the issues, the trials, the tribulations that people go through. And it's crazy to think that you really had to put in perspective, like, man, you know, like the entire, like the goal was already set during the very beginning of the show. And then the payoff with, you know, the part 2 finale was just fantastic. Like Leo said, you know, Admiral Zhao, he's so arrogant that he would kill effectively is what is a god in this universe or spirit, you know, but it's so insane to, you know, you kind of get a little bit more backstory on Admiral Zhao as well with Zhang Zhang, you know, with him, you know, how he is a firebender, but he's very ruthless. He has no self-control, and how firebending seems awesome, but it's the most dangerous element to bear, because you have to be so careful with, you know, it can't hurt those around you, but it's all about self-control. But was there anything else you guys kind of wanted to mention before we head over to our next topic? Kind of just going over our favorite episodes and our favorite character from book 1.
There was something I had on the tip of my tongue here. Oh, Iroh, I guess we could talk about this a little bit more in the next section. But, yo, Uncle Iroh even gets like an arc and a change, and we see like through him helping Zuko throughout the beginning, like in that first episode, he's kind of impatient. Like Uncle Iroh's kind of like pressing on him a bit. And through their journey and growth, even he becomes the tea-sipping, loving Uncle Iroh that we love and know through this book.
Yeah, Uncle Iroh, he's the you know, the Dragon of the West, you know, holding Ba Sing Se for, what was it, like 100 something days or something like that?
I think they said like 600 or so. So like he was there for years.
Years, yeah. It's so crazy. And he's the only like general to ever like siege a city, and it's like, wow. It is crazy. Like every single character, like you said, Mike, even with Sokka, it's like they could have easily just made him like the butt of every joke and just moved on. But no, he actually gets his own character arc for being like one of the main cast that doesn't have any bending. And I think that was a really nice touch and a very interesting angle that, like, hey, you know, there's not everyone in this world is an earthbender, especially with I think it was in the Great Divide episode. They're like, who here's an earthbender? And there's 2 twins. He's like, I'm an earthbender. And the other guy's like, I'm not. So it's, we don't really know the genetics or anything, but it's like, you know, there are just some people who do not have this ability. And, you know, everyone plays such a great part. So many amazing payoffs. But let's get into our favorite episodes and characters from book 1. I know we've been gushing here for over like 45 minutes about just how fantastic book 1 is, but I wanted to pass it over to Leo, then we'll go to Mike. If you had a favorite episode that stuck out to you this time around with your rewatch, and your favorite character from book 1.
All right, so are we avoiding like main characters, or?
It can be main characters. It could be side characters. It could be Momo. It could be Appa. It doesn't even.
Well, my favorite episode by far of this season is the 2-part finale. I think we see a lot of character arcs really come to fruition in that finale, including Zuko, who is somebody who throughout this arc refused to run away from a fight, but even when he defeated his enemy, and he still didn't want his enemy to die. So it was that little glimmer of seeing that he has good in him at the end, because he even kidnapped Aang, but still he's back and forth in his mind about it. It's like getting that glimpse of Zuko beginning to really come over to the good side was really satisfying. I like so many characters here because they come back around. Jet, Zhang, Boomy, Roku. I mean, you've got all these characters that come right back around in the story in the best ways. I really like that Jet episode because it really shows that, and Zuko alone, I think, do such a great job of showing what this war has done to people. And I think it shows that you have a range of reactions to the war. You have people who have a sense of morality that won't allow them to go too far, but then you have people like Jet who are even willing to kill an old man just because he's from the Fire Nation. It really shows the hatred that this war has caused, the tyranny that this war has caused. I love the Jet episode. I like the Great Divide episode because I think that is another example of what the war has done. I mean, even scrapping over resources on a smaller scale. Like, honestly, it's hard to pick one episode because even the Jean episode is so good because it shows that Aang is not ready for fire yet. Honestly, I gotta say the 2-part finale though. I mean, that animation is so good. Getting to explore and dip a little deeper into the spirit world and into the spirits, getting to see Ko the Face Stealer. It just really is ahead of its time. So ahead of its time. I mean, honestly, I like every episode just about. I even the ones that feel
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, even the ones that feel a little fillery, like the waterbending scroll one, and some of those like the imprisoned.
But even that has a payoff because that introduces the pirates. So that was
when so I was, all of them.
Yeah.
But that's also when they become benders too, right? Like Katara's finally useful.
Yeah, that's when Katara like finally starts like killing it with the waterbending. Killing it.
That's the moment where it's like, oh, thank God she's not Sakura.
Yeah,
well, that's a whole discussion for another day, my friend. I mean, Sakura was just chilling during them tuning exams. Anyway, every episode, though, honestly, I don't really have a favorite. I like them all.
It's very tough, but I'll pass it over here to Mike. It's okay. Instead of saying favorite episode, I guess I can rephrase it to an episode that stood out to you during this rewatch and your favorite character. So, Mike, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm with Leo. The Winter Solstice finale, amazing. It is just like peak Avatar right there. But there's a lot of great moments, right? Like Imprisoned is a great Katara episode. The Kyoshi Warriors. Kyoshi Island is a great Sokka episode. But I think the Winter Solstice 2-parter, when that's the call to action, right? That's when we first meet Roku. That's when he says, hey, you've got till summer's end to finish your mission. I think that's when the series takes the ultimate shift because now Aang knows how serious it is and he knows that he has a timer. And I think that that timer helps push the story forward because like, okay, we got to move quickly. We can't lollygag anymore. It's great. It's a great episode for Zuko as well, seeing like the lengths he will go to catch the Avatar and defeat Zhao. And so I really love the Winter Solstice, the Siege of the North. Those are great episodes. And like Leo said, it's really hard to like narrow down which ones you like the best. But I think those are my personal favorites. And as far as my favorite character, I would have to probably say Zuko. Because Zuko in this season is very understated, right? He's not even he's in like maybe 12 of the 20 episodes, I think, this season. But I love how from the very beginning of the show, we're rooting for Zuko. And it would have been very easy to put him in a corner and say, oh, yeah, he's the villain, because he is. He's the first antagonist we're introduced to. But once we have that first Agni Kai again with him and Zhao, that wins us over. He and Uncle Iroh, throughout everything they've done, like tormenting our main characters, there's still something about them that sticks out. And like Leo was saying, the groundwork was set, right? Of Aang saying, maybe one day we can be friends, or the fact that Zuko, throughout everything, was still willing to like reach out his hand and try and save Zhao, I think just shows Zuko's character, shows the heart of his character, right? He's not all evil. He just has this one goal in mind, or this one mission. He's going to do whatever it takes to succeed. And that even comes from the Blue Spirit episode, which is another banger, because seeing Zuko, again, go at length to capture the Avatar, even if it means double-crossing his own nation, it's amazing. Zuko, MVP of this season for me.
I would agree. For me, Zuko is my favorite character from book one. As far as like my favorite episode, I know it's hard to pick just one, but of course, the Winter Solstice is definitely one of them. You guys already said the Siege of the North. Those are probably, my two favorite, but also the Storm episode. I just love how that one really stuck out to me as well. I mean, they're all great. It's just with the Storm episode, you really just get the understanding of, why Zuko is just always so just pissed and just so miserable all the time. He hasn't exactly had like the best life. And arguably, I think out of any like show or movie that I've ever watched, he definitively has the best redemption story out of any villain or just out of any character I've ever encountered in my entire life. Of course, we'll get to that one once book 2 and book 3, but just his journey all around, just understanding why he is the way he is. And I think Mike actually tweeted during the Storm episode where he has to duel his own father. And I forgot what Firelord Ozai said. He said, something along the lines of pain or something will be your teacher.
Pain and suffering will be your teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, let's call it how it is. Like, viewing this as adults, I was like, wow, Firelord Ozai is incredibly abusive to Zuko. Like, very, very verbally abusive, physically abusive. I mean, it's on his face. Like, he is incredibly abusive. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Christian.
Oh no, I actually just found Mike's tweet. It was when Firelord Ozai gives Zuko the scar on his face. He says you will fight for your honor. You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher. And I'm like, even just reading it, it's like it just sends chills down your spine, where it's just like you will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher.
But can we talk about the foreshadow again, though? Like, because that is what happens, right? Like, out of everything Zuko went through, it was his teacher. And that is just incredible. And like everything you guys have been saying is totally correct. I just love Zuko so much. And in this season, especially, like, I love how you mentioned the Storm, Christian, because that episode is 100% exposition. Like, that should not work. That should be the worst episode of the season, because we're literally sitting around a campfire telling origin stories. But somehow they made it work, and they made it one of the most compelling stories in the entire series.
Yeah, it is so crazy. I just love that so much. You will learn respect. I was like, oh man, the way you will fight for your honor, you will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher. I'm like, oh, pulling out the Firelord Ozai scriptures, y'all, like 100%. But let's move on here to kind of along the same lines, but not necessarily. This, again, as I mentioned before, I'm taking a page out of the Braving the Elements, the official Avatar podcast, where they literally break down each and every episode. They bring on some of the amazing voice actors throughout the series. I have been meaning to catch up on it. I've just been so busy doing a lot of other things, but I forgot what book they're on right now. I think they're on book 2. I could be wrong. I can't remember. I'm not sure no.
Sorry, it's book 2.
It's book 2. Okay, it is book 2.
Yeah.
But so we're going to go through our favorite bending and non-bending moments from book 1. So we'll start with Mike, then we'll go to Leo, and then I'll close ourselves out.
So at first, my favorite non-bending moment was just the blue spirit entirely. But I feel like I've talked about Zuko enough to where we're going to skip to my second favorite non-bending moment, right? And that's Princess Yue giving up her life to save the world, essentially, bringing back the moon spirit. Like, that is not a bending moment at all, but it is instrumental to this universe, and it changed the world. And I love how they make sure we never forget that. So yeah, I love Princess Yue so much in that moment. It is incredible.
Yeah, Princess Yue. I mean, and again, as you mentioned, with her being a part of Sokka's arc, and effectively, even though, him and Suki, later on, we'll get to that in our other recordings, but, this effectively being Sokka's first love, at least that we've seen on screen, and the impact of, their chemistry, they're vibing and kind of like they're both nervous, but they're not entirely sure if they should be doing this or not. But I'll pass it over to, I'm sorry. Well, what was your favorite bending moment? I'll show you earthbending style.
That is
said earthbending style.
That will forever crack me up. That might be the best joke in the entire show. But as far as my favorite bending moment, it kind of piggybacks right off of that, right? We set up in the first part of the finale. Aang is going into the spirit world. And he's like, well, who knows? Maybe they'll give me some crazy power to defeat the Fire Nation. And it's like, Aang's 12. This is not a serious moment. But then his eyes glow. And then he just says, it's not over. And just shoots into the water and comes out as a kaiju fish. Crazy, crazy moment. And it feels like a Deus Ex Machina. But it's just the manifestation of everything this season has been building up to. And you said at the top of the show, Christian, it's about bringing balance, and Aang being that bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world. They merge together because Zhao is a threat not just to the water tribe in the physical world, but now to the spirits as a whole. So Aang becoming giant kaiju koi fish to save the day is one of the craziest moments. It's the most anime ending you could put in Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I love every second of it. It is so good.
Definitely. All right, Leo, what about you? Your favorite bending and non-bending moment from book one?
So my favorite character of the whole series is Avatar Aang. So it was definitely the episode The Blue Spirit, when he uncovers that it's Zuko and he says, hey, maybe in another lifetime we could have been friends. I thought that was like such a charming moment and such a defining moment for where both of their characters were at the time. And you just love the fact that he says that. And later on, they actually do work together. Love that moment. Absolutely one of my favorite moments of the entire series, actually. And then bending moment. So there are a lot of moments where Aang goes Avatar state that I really enjoy. Of course, seeing Magyatso, that was so emotional. I think my favorite bending moment, though, maybe aside from Aang being fused with the moon spirit, is Katara versus Pakku. I think that even though Katara knew that she wasn't going to beat Grandmaster Pakku, just the implications of showing him that, yeah, women can fight. Women are warriors. And getting him and the rest of the men in that tribe to change their minds about their antiquitous ways. It has more meaning behind it. So that's probably my favorite bending moment. I also really like the moment where Aang is being naive with his firebending and is twirling it around and against John John's wishes, playing with the fire, and of course he burns Katara. It's just such a good lesson in that even though he's the Avatar, he's still got to take it serious. And then when you see Avatar Roku come up and is like, hey man, you got to the end of the summer, my man, buckle down. It really comes back around in the best of ways.
I definitely agree with you there. As far as for me, man, I mean, of course, the Seas of the North, Avatar, and just going, just doing what avatars do, helping people. I would probably say, oh my gosh, there's so many amazing moments, but I guess for favorite bending would probably be when Zuko is facing Admiral Zhao in the Agni Kai, and with Uncle Iroh kind of just constantly reminding Zuko to go back to the basics, don't forget your basics, it's all about the breath of the fire. And Zuko could have easily ended him right then and there. And then, he misses on purpose and he says, get in my way again. And next time I won't miss. And it's the tension between them because there's these big elephants in the room that they know about, but it's like they kind of dance around. And it's like every single time that you see them on screen. And it's just, I really enjoyed that bending moment between them, just to choose something other, because that would be like, oh yeah, mine's the same as Mike. But I mean, there's so many phenomenal like bending moments in this entire in book one in general. And I think that Leo brought up a really good point between Master Paku and Katara, because then right then and there is what we can really see how waterbenders, or just how bending works between water. And then of course with Boomy, like we can really see like a experienced, seasoned bender at their peak, or, around their peak, and saying, hey, this is what these superhumans, these benders can do with, the right tools and years of experience. Obviously we see it through Avatar, through Aang with his Avatar state, but that's more of, channeling the experience of all the other avatars together. But just having like a single like waterbender, just like this is, flexing completely. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, we saw Avatar Roku pop up and destroy that temple, and I was like, whoa, this is what firebending can do? Like,
yeah, I mean, he's lava bending, right? That's the first instance of lava bending in the universe, and it's so interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. But also another underrated moment is in the Fortune Teller episode where Aang is fighting a volcano. And remember, he can't firebend. That's all airbending. And he stopped a volcano. It's insane.
Airbending master.
Yeah, it is. That was another great moment as well. For my non-bending moment, it would probably just be the Kyoshi Warriors. I mean, at least they're attempting to, drive back the Fire Nation as much as they can, because, it's all that they have. But, they really just know how to handle themselves in those situations. They are trained to deal with benders, even though they are not benders themselves. I believe they're also part of the Earth Kingdom. They're in the Earth Kingdom, I think, because
yes, because
they're part of the Earth Kingdom. By the way, Mike and Bryan would love to see the Suki versus Azula battle uncut, because they just rush at each other and it just freeze frames and that's it.
My gosh, yeah.
Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. Every time Dragon Ball Z came on, the name of the episode, that title did not happen until the following episode. You're like, oh, so it's not going to happen this week. It's like Goku versus Frieza. Yeah, that's not happening this week. This is like the
Goku stuck powering up in the corner. Like, dude, I swear, Dragon Ball Z, man, they just be wasting time on stuff. You be like, come on, bro. Get to the battle. Frieza explaining his plan for 20 minutes.
Not the best storytelling in the world, but the action is fantastic. But really quick, let's get into our final 2 points here. So for book one, since we've been gushing about it here for a little bit over an hour, where does this fall in your Avatar ranking between all three seasons? We'll start with Leo, then we'll go to Mike, and then I'll close out.
You know what's crazy is this is actually, it falls the lowest on my ranking, even though it is still such a phenomenal season. For me, it's book 3, 3, 2, 1. They get better as they go along for me. And it's crazy to think that this is like the least favorite, but still so good. I mean, that just it goes to show how great of a show it is. But yeah, 3, 2, 1 for me.
Okay. Mike, what about you?
I'm with Leo in the sense that this is the lowest of all of the Avatar seasons. And again, like you just said, Christian, we spent the last hour gushing about how perfect this show and this season is. For this to be at the bottom just speaks to how great Avatar: The Last Airbender is as a whole, and it's not really a knock on this season. But also, I think it's very clear why this is the weakest, because it is missing 4 characters that might be the best in the series to be continued.
Toph, baby.
Yes, sir. The Blind Bandit will make her appearance in season 2, y'all. Let's go. But yeah, seriously, though, I'm like, it's fantastic for me. I think you guys pretty much echoed. But actually, I mean, I love book 3. But I think book 2, Earth is. There's just so it's not even the climax is what kills me, because book 2 is so amazing. And you know, with book 1, you know, it is my lowest, but it's so I don't know, like you, I think Mike had mentioned it before, you know, it's book 1 sets up so much stuff for book 2, and it's like they thought ahead, or and it's like, wow, it's so insane. But yeah, it would be 2, 3, 1, but like honestly 2 and 3 are kind of tied for first place, because it's like, you know, book 3 is fantastic. I have no issues with book 3 whatsoever, but it's like my favorite character gets introduced in book 2, and you know, everything with Bossing say, of course, I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. We'll save that for the next episode, but it is just fantastic stuff.
My favorite episode of the entire series is the Firebending Masters.
Oh yeah, that's a good one for sure.
Book 2 is perfect. I'm just gonna leave that there.
It is like I can't wait for us to talk. I can't wait to rewatch it. I'm so excited. But really quick, let's get into our final thoughts about book 1 overall. We'll go with Mike, then Leo, then I'll close out, and then we'll get the heck on out of here.
Closing thoughts. Ooh, that's a tough one, because Avatar: The Last Airbender is a series that I will never stop talking about, never stop watching. So to try and put a bow on this conversation is impossible for me, but I'll do my best. Book 1 is not without its faults. There's a couple episodes here and there, like Bacho of the Water Tribe, where it's like Aang is acting kind of out of character, lying. It's weird. But overall, the entire season, I think, comes together really nicely. Like, you see, it's very lighthearted in the pilot, and then you just see the stakes get higher and higher and more intense as this season goes along. And I think introducing a villain like Zhao as a foil for both Aang and Zuko really sets up our two main characters perfectly going up into the next book. And can we just talk about that finale where Zuko finally tells us about Azula? Like, she was born lucky. He was lucky to be born. That, like, again, Zuko is a great character, but that line right there just cements why you're invested in his arc going into book 2. So I think book 1, again, a lot of setup, but a lot of great individual moments within it alone. It's not just purely setup, and it's a very satisfying story all on its own.
Well said. Well said. So, Leo, what are your closing thoughts?
It's closing time, boys. Turn all the lights on. So, love this season. Love how much it sets up for the rest of the series. I mean, it's, again, we all said it's our least favorite season, but it's crazy how even though it is our least favorite, it's still a fantastic season. And yeah, it leaves us with that nugget to open up so much more when it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like, Zhao is gone, and you know Zuko might be is on a better path now, and then you get Azula, and you realize, oh yeah, that's right, the Fire Nation is still a threat. Just because Zhao's gone doesn't mean we can celebrate too long. They really don't hold back with that one either. I mean, just dropping her right in, and it's like, all right, well, since Zhao's gone, guess what? You got a bigger threat now. Just really love what this sets up and how all these characters end up making their way back into the series eventually. Just a very good book all around. I was looking at the episode list and I'm like, there's not one episode that I was just like, oh man, snooze fest. Like, nope. I enjoyed it all, beginning and end.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people trash The Great Divide so much, and I think it gets a lot of hate simply because it's the worst episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But it's still an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, so it's still a banger.
It is. Redemption. Redemption.
So great.
For my closing thoughts, you know, it's we've talked about, book one being like, I guess if you are to rank them, but it's like book one is so necessary and we still love it all the same because book one is world building, like through and through. Like we could not enjoy season 2 or season 3 without the introduction to these characters and just the world building and understanding how this universe works all together. And obviously you could tell someone, like book 2 and book 3 are fantastic, and then they go and immediately watch it. They're not going to know any of these characters. They're not going to know about Sozin's comet hitting by summer's ends. And it's so crazy. Everything this happens between these 3 seasons, but especially with book 1, it's so necessary to get hit the ground running. And there's a clear goal between each season. There's an overarching goal between, the entire series, which is defeating the Fire Lord to, bring balance to the world. That doesn't necessarily mean that the world is saved, but it will be left in a better state than what it was before. And then, the world can begin to heal of itself. And so
it's very just, much fellowship, right?
Yeah, literally. I mean, it's a clear goal, and it being a children's show, it really needed that to have like a clear goal for kids to understand, like, why Aang and, the rest of the cast are going through all of these, story arcs and what have you. It's, it's all to defeat the big bad. And that's really, it's a very linear story, but there's so many detours that are like really necessary. Like, I don't think there's a single, we talked about the Great Divide, but I don't think there's a single episode that you can just skip over because it's like it all just adds up and has amazing payoff, in later seasons. So it's been a wild ride, and I'm very excited to go through book 2. We're there. We're almost here. It's almost time. I'm very, very excited. But that pretty much concludes our series revisited of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water. I wanted to thank Mike and Leo for both coming onto the podcast. All 3 of us are crazy, crazy Avatar fans. And, we're going to be covering book 2 and book 3 for you guys down the line. So definitely keep a lookout for those. Might get into Legend of Korra. I'm sensing that. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm down if these 2 cool cats are. But I'm going to pass it over to Leo and then to Mike so they can let everyone know where you can find them on the internet. So Leo, where can everyone find your work?
Guys, come on over to YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit in that search bar, Geekly Goods, guys, Geekly Goods. And once you search that, you'll see 2 G's. That's my logo. Come on over to the channel. Let's talk some geek, guys. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you're on social media, you can find me at Leo Rydel GG on all platforms. Thanks for having me on, Christian.
Of course, man. It's always, we're in the Avatar verse. It's back, baby. We're getting some Avatar Studio goodness. So, Mr. Michael Thomas, where can everyone find you on the internet?
Yeah, you guys can find me at Novice Cinephile just about everywhere on YouTube, on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram at The Novice Cinephile. And yeah, just check out the YouTube channel because there's a lot of Avatar content there, and it's going to continue to be uploaded there because it's basically turning into an Avatar channel at this point because I'm that big of a fanboy. So make sure you check that out. Also, The Chatter After is our podcast where we talk everything movies, TV. We might end up hitting Avatar on that show one day if I can convince Brandon and Isaac to rewatch it. And of course, the Amateur Otaku podcast where we're talking anime. We've got some My Hero Academia OVAs coming up. So filler time, baby. And thanks again, Christian, for having me on. It's always a blast.
Of course, man. It's always great having you guys on the show. We always have some fantastic conversations. And I was just so juiced up from all this, this reported Avatar, studios movie, like animated movie stuff between, what was it? Zuko, Kyoshi. I mean, not Kyoshi.
Zuko, Kyoshi, Korra.
Yeah, Kyoshi. Wow. I'm blanking here. And then Korra as well. Yeah, so it's going to be a blast. But of course, you can find our podcast if you've liked what you've heard here today, of course, at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Again, definitely go check out Leo and Mike's work on their respective outlets. You know, they do fantastic work. You know, they're working around the clock, much like we are. And you know, we're just talking about the thing that really just keeps us going through the week. Not only just Avatar, but just, you know, these stories that movies and TV shows are able to bring to our lives. And, you know, it's always, you know, what are we watching this week? What's coming up the week after that? You know, it's such a fun conversation starter for like families and friends and whatnot. But if you've liked what you heard here on today's episode, you can subscribe to our podcast. Again, that's Film Optix, Optix with an X, on podcast platforms of your choice. And make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, your lover, whoever it may be. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with the movie lover in need. And with that said, we hope you guys have an amazing day, and we'll see you guys later on. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you all for listening. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And follow us on Twitter or Instagram to stay in the know. That was Leo, Mike. My name is Christian. We'll see you guys in the next one.